Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I'd only been gone for 8 days. Just a simple fishing trip with my cousin over on Lake Cumberland. Nothing unusual for this time of year. The sunrises were golden, the trout were biting, and for a while, all the noise of daily life disappeared behind the fog of the lake. But when I came home, it wasn't the quiet comfort I expected waiting for me. It was something else, something just a little off. The front porch was swept cleaner than usual, like someone had scrubbed it to perfection. Lori was always tidy, sure, but there was no reason to sweep corners no one would see. The flower beds were freshly mulched, too, the kind of work Lori usually left for me. Inside, the house was spotless. Dishes done, counters gleaming, floors shining. But it wasn't the kind of clean you do because you like a tidy home. It was the kind of clean you do when you're covering up a mess. Lori came out of the kitchen, smiling like I was the one who disappeared for months instead of just a week. "Welcome home, baby," she said, pulling me into a hug. It felt tight, maybe too tight. I hugged her back, but there was a part of me holding back, noticing little things. She smelled like citrus and vanilla, fancy soaps she only used on holidays. Her hair was done up, and her makeup looked more like she was headed to Sunday service than cleaning the house all day. "You missed the fair board meeting," she said, trying to sound casual as we sat down for supper. "But don't worry, I went for you. Let's set me back a bit." Lori never went to those meetings unless she had to, and she sure didn't volunteer. "Did you?" I asked. "Yeah, just wanted to help," she replied, brushing it off. We ate in relative peace, but I noticed she kept her phone turned face down on the table, flinching every time it buzzed. I didn't press it. Not yet. After supper, I found myself wandering through the house while Lori finished up in the kitchen. The laundry room door was cracked open. Nothing strange, except the lingering scent of cologne, not mine. Faint but there. I leaned into it, confused. Maybe one of her friends had visited, I reasoned. Lori did have a habit of inviting neighbors over when I was away. Still, I couldn't shake the tension crawling up my spine. Later, as we settled into bed, Lori talked about upcoming county fair plans, who would be baking pies, which families were doing the hayrides. Ordinary stuff, but it all felt hollow, somehow. I listened, nodded, played the role of the loving husband, but my eyes kept drifting to her phone resting quietly on the nightstand, screen dark, holding whatever secrets it wasn't ready to share. The next morning, as I left early to check on some fence work out by the pasture, I spotted something that stopped me cold. Lori's truck was parked out front. Nothing unusual there. But inside, hanging from the rearview mirror, was a keychain I'd never seen before, bright red, with a stitched patch reading "Property of D." It wasn't mine. It sure wasn't Lori's. And just like that, the unease I'd been feeling didn't seem so silly anymore. I didn't mention the keychain that morning. I tucked it away in the back of my mind like a sharp stone in my boot, knowing it would grind at me all day whether I wanted it to or not. As I drove out to check the south fence line, I kept replaying the moment I saw it, the red fabric, the stitched letters, "Property of D." I tried to think who D could be. Our neighbors? Nope. Cousins? Nope. Lori didn't know anyone close with that initial except Daryl, the manager down at the feed store. I shook my head at the thought, telling myself it was probably a novelty trinket, something from a fair or a gag gift. Lori loved to collect odds and ends. But that explanation didn't stick. It couldn't. Not with everything else piling up behind it. Later that day, while Lori ran errands in town, I rummaged through the laundry room for some work gloves and found more than I bargained for. On the shelf, behind an old bait bucket, was a small gift box, the kind you'd see wrapped for a special occasion. I opened it, half expecting it to be something innocent, maybe even for me. Inside was a sleek leather belt, high-end, definitely not something I'd wear. But it wasn't just the belt. There was a little note tucked beneath it. Just a simple folded card with the words, "Can't wait till next Friday." Same place. Same time. D. I stood there gripping the box, so tight my knuckles went white. Friday. The day I returned. Same place. Same time. My stomach churned. I could already picture it. The back of Lori's truck parked behind the diner, where Daryl always took smoke breaks after closing up shop. I felt the rage bubble up inside me, hotter than I'd ever let myself get, but I swallowed it down. I didn't scream. I didn't storm into town. I took the box, resealed it perfectly, and put it back on the shelf. But not before I made a small adjustment. I went out to the workshop and found my old leather punch. I added an extra hole near the buckle, too small for the tongue to fit. When someone went to wear it, the belt would look normal until it didn't, until it slipped loose when it mattered. Petty? Maybe, but it felt right. I wasn't about to confront Lori without knowing the full story. I needed more. Over the next few days, I watched her carefully. She didn't act guilty. If anything, she seemed relaxed, maybe even a little smug. She mentioned the fair at every turn, how she was looking forward to the pie contest, the livestock shows, the karaoke night, and how much fun it would be to go together. I played along, nodding, smiling, even offering to help hang banners. Inside, I felt like I was boiling alive. The belt disappeared from a laundry room the following Friday. I didn't have to guess where it went. Lori left that evening claiming she was helping set up for the feed store's booth at the fairgrounds. She even kissed me goodbye like she was heading to Bible study. I didn't follow her. Not yet. I needed patience. When she returned later that night, flushed and tired, she mumbled something about working late and how the banners kept falling down. I nodded, said nothing, and handed her a cup of coffee. As she sipped it, I noticed she was wearing a new necklace I'd never seen. I didn't ask about it. Instead, I quietly started noting every small detail, the nervous glances at her phone, the way she left early for errands without explaining where, the fresh layer of perfume she never wore unless it was Sunday morning. I realized quickly that Lori wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She thought I was blind. She thought I'd never noticed the late nights, the new trinkets, or the carefully chosen words. But I noticed everything. I spent the next week like a shadow in my own home, moving quietly, watching carefully, speaking only when necessary. Lori seemed to take my calm for ignorance. She laughed more freely, sang along to the radio while cooking, even made little jokes about the fair like nothing was eating away at her husband just 2 feet away. But inside me, the storm was only getting stronger. I kept revisiting every small detail, the belt, the note, the keychain, the sudden late nights, all circling the same unanswered question. Was it really Daryl? I didn't want to jump the gun. I'd seen good men tear apart their marriages by assuming too much too soon. Maybe Dee wasn't who I thought. Maybe I was walking myself into a trap of my own making. I needed evidence. Solid. Unshakable. That's when I started paying attention to the wrong person. Or so I thought. One evening, while Lori was showering, I noticed her phone left unattended on the coffee table. I knew better than to snoop without reason, but I wasn't feeling noble anymore. I picked it up, half expecting to find texts from Daryl or some smoking gun in plain sight. Instead, the last few texts were from Randy, a mechanic from town, harmless enough, or so I thought. I scrolled back through weeks of messages, each one hinting at meetups, small compliments, casual flirts. It wasn't explicit, but it was enough to make my heart pound. Was I wrong? Was Randy the one? I confronted her that night, trying not to sound accusatory. Been talking to Randy a lot lately, haven't you? I asked while she folded laundry. She blinked, caught off guard, then let out a small laugh. Oh, honey, Randy's been helping me with the truck since you've been busy. You know how fussy that old engine gets. I stared at her, waiting for a crack. But she held the line, as smooth as ever. He even offered to help get it tuned up for the fair, she added. For a moment, I felt like the fool. Maybe I was seeing betrayal where there wasn't any. Maybe Randy was just doing neighborly favors, and I was turning into a jealous husband for nothing. I nodded, mumbled something about trusting her, and went to bed that night, kicking myself for pushing. The next day, Randy himself waved at me from the garage like nothing was off. You and Lori ready for the fair? He asked. I nodded, still feeling the sting of my own paranoia. Yeah, she mentioned you've been helping her with the truck. He grinned. Of course. Lori's like family. His words hit harder than they should have. Maybe I was chasing ghosts. That evening, I apologized to Lori, told her I was stressed and reading too much into things. She smiled sweetly, told me she understood, and said she was just glad I wasn't mad. The relief on her face almost made me believe I'd been wrong. Almost. But later that night, as she slipped off to bed, I noticed something. A fresh feed store receipt sticking out her purse. Not for truck parts. Not for anything Randy would have had a hand in. It was for a leather bracelet, engraved. I pulled out quietly. For D. My throat tightened. Randy's name wasn't Daryl. And Randy wasn't the one. I'd been looking in the wrong direction the whole time. And now I wasn't just suspicious. I was certain. The next few days felt like living with a stranger wearing my wife's face. Lori carried on as if everything was normal, smiling, humming while tending to the garden, even leaving me little notes reminding me about the fair schedule. But every time I looked at her, all I could see was that receipt, engraved bracelet for D. There was no denying it now. I wasn't dealing with friendly favors or harmless chats. I was dealing with a lie sitting in my own kitchen, acting like nothing was wrong. I kept my mouth shut. I wasn't about to confront her without seeing it for myself. I knew Lori well enough to know that she could talk circles around anyone if cornered too soon. I needed to be patient. And patience wasn't exactly my strong suit, but in this case, it was necessary. I started watching her patterns like a hawk. Monday, she said she was helping Susan with the pie contest signups. Tuesday, it was organizing ribbons for the livestock show. Wednesday, she mentioned the feed store was short on help, and Daryl needed an extra hand arranging hay bales for the display booth. Daryl. The name finally surfaced from her lips like it was just another townsperson she was casually helping out. The way she said it, smooth, practiced, sent a cold shiver down my spine. She even joked, "You know how flustered he gets running that place alone." I gave a small nod, hiding the wildfire brewing inside me. I had never noticed how often she talked about the fair this year, how every excuse circled back to it like it was the only thing keeping her busy. Or maybe it was keeping her hidden. Thursday evening, I decided to visit the feed store myself. Lori was supposedly at Susan's again, baking for the fair. Daryl's truck was parked out back, dust-covered and crooked like he'd slid into the space in a hurry. I wandered inside, pretending to be looking for baling twine. "Hey, Blake." Daryl greeted me from behind the counter. He looked as relaxed as ever, the same grin he wore every Sunday at church. "What brings you in?" "Just picking up some last-minute supplies for the fair," I said calmly. "Busy week, huh?" Daryl chuckled. "You bet. Town's gonna be swamped this year." Lori's been a big help. I forced a nod, biting down the urge to make it known right there and then. Instead, I bought the twine I didn't need and left. On the drive home, I couldn't shake the way Daryl said Lori's name. Not casually, but comfortably, like someone who didn't have to pretend anymore. That night, Lori came home smelling like sawdust and straw. "Susan's kitchen was a mess," she sighed, flopping onto the couch. "You wouldn't believe the disaster." I almost laughed. She was good. Too good. I sat beside her, pretending to listen, while inside, I could already feel myself pulling away from her like she was a stranger who had let herself into my house. By Friday, I had made up my mind. I would let her continue the charade just a little longer. I wasn't going to stop her. Not yet. I needed to know exactly where they went, exactly how they did it. No assumptions. No more guessing. So when Lori kissed me goodbye that evening and said she was headed to Susan's one last time before the fair, I simply smiled and waved. But this time I followed. And what I saw wasn't a kitchen full of flour and pie crusts. It was Lori slipping into the back entrance of the feed store after hours. No lights. No customers. Just her and a familiar shadow waiting inside. My heart didn't race. It didn't even hurt anymore. It just burned steady like an old iron stove, and I knew then that the next move was mine. I sat in my truck across from the feed store, headlights off, watching through the open slats of the weathered siding. Lori slipped inside without hesitation, like she'd done it 100 times. The way she checked over her shoulder wasn't anxious. It was routine. That hit harder than I expected. I watched as the door shut behind her, and the faint glow of a single bulb lit up the back room. From where I sat, I couldn't see much, just silhouettes shifting through the small, dusty window, but it was enough. There was no mistaking Daryl's broad shoulders and Lori's familiar outline, standing way too close. I gripped the steering wheel so tight it creaked under my palms. Part of me wanted to march right in and blow the whole thing up, but I wasn't ready for a cheap explosion. I needed something lasting. Something she wouldn't talk her way out of by morning. I stayed right where I was, forcing myself to watch until they left separately, pretending like nothing had happened. The next day, Lori was back to her sweet, caring self. She made breakfast, talked about how excited she was for the fair, and even suggested we enter the couple's pie-eating contest like we always did. I nodded along, playing the fool one more time, while inside I was already preparing the real contest, the one she wouldn't see coming. I spent that afternoon making sure everything was in place. The fairground stage, the seating, even the schedule for karaoke night. It all fell together like clockwork. I called in a favor with Kaylee, a longtime friend of mine who Lori had always side-eyed at church picnics and whispered about at home. Kaylee agreed without hesitation when I laid it all out for her. The timing, the song, the perfect moment. Lori didn't suspect a thing. She waltzed into the fairground that evening holding my hand, greeting neighbors, smiling like she hadn't turned me into the town's biggest joke behind the feed store. "You've been quiet lately," she teased as we walked past the prize pigs. "Fair nerves?" I chuckled. Something like that. As the night went on, I played my part flawlessly, helped set up booths, handed out raffle tickets, and even joked with Daryl when he passed by. He smiled that smug little smile of his, and Lori barely flinched, pretending like they hadn't just been tangled up behind closed doors 24 hours ago. When karaoke night rolled around, I stood up like I always did, waving off the cheers and playful jeers from the regulars. Lori clapped along, probably thinking I was about to sing her usual duet like every other year. Instead, I called Kaylee up on stage. The entire crowd shifted, murmurs floating through the air like summer heat. Lori's hands froze mid-clap. Kaylee strutted up, grinning ear to ear, and we sang a song Lori knew well, one we used to sing together back when things were good. I watched Lori from the stage. She stood there stiff, trying to smile, but failing miserably as the entire town stared. As the song ended, I didn't step off the stage. Neither did Kaylee. Instead, I turned, wrapped an arm around her, and kissed her right there under the hot glow of the fairground lights. It wasn't soft. It wasn't shy. It was deliberate, and it sent a ripple through the crowd like a dropped stone in still water. When I finally pulled back, I leaned into the microphone, heart pounding but steady, and said loud enough for the whole town to hear, "Figured it was time for some fresh stock." The place erupted. Laughter, gasps, cheers. I caught sight of Lori storming toward the parking lot, red-faced and shaking. Daryl wasn't far behind, looking like a man who'd just swallowed a hornet. And me? I stepped off the stage with Kaylee's hand in mine, calm as could be. The next morning the house was quiet, too quiet, like the whole building was holding its breath. I half expected Lori to have packed up and left in the night, but when I walked into the kitchen, there she was, sitting at the table staring at her coffee like it might give her the answer she'd been searching for all night. She didn't even look up when I poured myself a cup and sat down across from her. "You humiliated me," she finally said, voice low but sharp. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching her without flinching. "Oh, you mean like sneaking around with Daryl behind the diner? Or in the back room of the feed store after hours?" Her eyes snapped up to meet mine, wide and furious, but also panicked. That panic was the first honest thing I'd seen from her in weeks. "You don't understand," she started, but I cut her off. "I understand plenty, Lori. You weren't even trying to hide it. The keychain, the belt, the bracelet, the late-night errands that somehow all led you right to Daryl." I took a long sip. "You just figured I'd be too blind or too loyal to ever put the pieces together." Her hands clenched into fists. "It wasn't like that. I made a mistake. One mistake. You've been so distant, Blake. Always off with the boys or stuck in your work. I didn't know where we stood anymore." I leaned forward. "Don't you dare try to make this about me. You didn't trip and fall into Daryl's arms. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And you made it over and over again." Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't move me. "Not this time." "Blake, please," she whispered, reaching across the table. I didn't budge. "Tell me," I said calmly, "did you think about me at all? Or were you too busy playing house in the back of a pickup to remember you had one waiting for you here?" She jerked her hand back like I'd slapped her. "I thought we could fix it," she said, her voice cracking. "I thought if we made it through the fair, we could start fresh." I shook my head. I already started fresh last night. The words hung in the air like smoke. Her eyes widened. You and Kaylee? That was real. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She knew. You can't do this, she hissed, standing abruptly. I am your wife. No, I said, rising to meet her eye to eye. You were my wife. She staggered a step back like the words had wind behind them. You don't mean that, she said desperately. Blake, you don't mean that. I mean every word. The door might as well have slammed shut right there, even though neither of us had moved. Lori's face crumbled from rage to desperation. Blake, you can't just throw me away after everything we built. You threw it away the second you stepped into Daryl's truck, I said coldly. You just didn't expect me to return the favor. Her shoulders sagged like the fight had finally drained out of her. Without another word, she stormed upstairs, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I sat back down, finished my coffee, and for the first time in weeks, I felt nothing but clarity. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was done. Lori tried to act like nothing happened the next few days, wandering around the house pretending the fair scene and the kitchen conversation hadn't been real. She hummed to herself while folding laundry, asked me about tractor repairs, even made my favorite stew for dinner like a peace offering. But every word, every gesture, every soft glance she threw at me bounced off like rain on steel. I wasn't hers anymore, and deep down I think she knew it. I spent my time tidying up loose ends, not bothering to hide it. I canceled the upcoming couple's dinner we were supposed to host, told my folks to hold off on visiting, and dropped into the county clerk's office to quietly ask about divorce papers. I didn't announce it. I didn't give Lori the fight she was itching for. I left her to stew in the quiet, in the gap where my attention used to be. By midweek, word around town had already started spreading. The karaoke scene wasn't just small talk, it was wildfire. Kaylee and I had become the topic of every diner booth, church step, and bar counter from one side of town to the other. Folks didn't just notice, they loved it. The number of nods, claps on the back, and sly grins I got was enough to tell me I'd hit Lori where it hurt. Attention, reputation. Everyone now knew the perfect little picture Lori painted wasn't so perfect after all. Thursday night, she finally broke. I was fixing the fence post behind the barn when she came storming out, hair a mess, eyes wild. We need to talk, she snapped, arms crossed tight. I kept hammering calmly. You've been talking just fine without me. Blake, I swear, you're making this worse than it is, she said, stomping closer. It wasn't serious. It was stupid and selfish, but it wasn't real. I chuckled. Didn't seem stupid or selfish when you were hiding gifts and sneaking off. That wasn't, she hesitated, realizing mid-sentence that she'd just confirmed everything. Blake, please. Her voice cracked. Don't throw us away. I turned slowly, wiping the sweat from my brow. I didn't throw anything away, Lori. You did that all on your own. I just stopped cleaning up after you. Tears ran freely now, but it wasn't sorrow. It was frustration. She didn't cry when she betrayed me. She cried now because she was losing the upper hand. I can fix this, she said, stepping closer. We can go to counseling. You and me, we've been through worse. I stared at her, long and hard. No, we haven't. She blinked. Blake, please. Think about everything we built. I did, I said. And I'm tearing down the parts you ruined. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. Lori's lip trembled. You're really going to just end it like this? No chance? No fight. There was a fight, I said. You just fought it behind my back. She took another step forward, desperate, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. Don't. Her breath hitched. You'll regret this. No, I said, locking eyes with her. You will. I turned and walked back toward the house, leaving her standing there by the broken fence and wildflowers, watching me like she was seeing me for the first time. The next morning, Lori was waiting at the kitchen table like she hadn't slept all night. Her eyes were red, but there wasn't softness behind them. There was calculation. Blake, she said, trying to steady her voice, I've been thinking, and maybe we both rushed things last night. Maybe we can work this out. I grabbed my coffee and leaned against the counter without answering. She kept going. We can take a trip, get away from all the town gossip. We don't have to explain anything to anyone. We just start over. I took a sip, watching her scramble. Start over? I repeated flatly. Lori, You were already halfway into your second life before I even caught up. She blinked, holding back tears, or maybe rage. It was hard to tell. It wasn't like that. I made a mistake. It got out of hand. I shook my head slowly. You made a choice. Repeatedly. She stood up, palms flat on the table. I was lonely. You're always gone. Out fixing something, helping someone, working yourself into the ground. I needed more. My voice didn't waver. So you found more behind the feed store? Her face flushed with anger. You act like you're perfect. Like you haven't made mistakes. Like you didn't check out on us years ago. She tried to twist it, tried to shove guilt into my hands. I'd seen her pull that trick on others a dozen times, but not today. I calmly placed my coffee cup down. You're right. I've made mistakes. But none of them involved sneaking around with Daryl behind the diner. The sound of his name made her flinch, like she thought I wouldn't dare say it out loud. Everyone knows, Lori. You didn't even try to hide it. She stepped back, shaking her head. They'll forget. People will forget. We'll move past it. No, you'll move, I said firmly. Out. Her breath caught. Blake, you're leaving, I continued, unmoved by the desperation swelling behind her eyes. I want you gone by tonight. Please, she begged, voice trembling. I was stupid, but I love you. No, you love getting away with it, I said. You love the attention. You love playing both sides. You didn't love me. She lunged forward, gripping my shirt like that might anchor her. Don't do this. Don't throw us away over one mistake. I peeled her hands off me gently but firmly. You threw it away the second you thought I'd never catch on. Tears fell, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was done. Lori staggered back, mouth trembling. What about the fair? The church? The town? What will they say? I didn't even blink. They'll say I finally came to my senses. Her sobs filled the room, but I didn't waver. I picked up my keys, stepped past her, and left her standing in that kitchen like a ghost who just realized the house wasn't hers anymore. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. Lori moved out the very next day. She didn't slam doors, didn't make a scene, just packed her things and left without so much as a word, leaving behind only the echo of a life she pretended to want. I half expected her to drag out the goodbye, maybe beg a little more, but I think she knew it was useless. Once the town got wind of the full story, once folks started connecting the dots, her shame did the walking for her. I kept busy. There was no shortage of work around the property. The fences still needed mending, the hay still needed stacking, and the early mornings didn't care that my wife had turned my life upside down. But as the days went by, something strange happened. I started feeling lighter. Not better, not yet, but clearer. The house no longer felt like a gallery of broken promises. It felt like mine again. Kaylee started stopping by more often, under the pretense of dropping off church bulletins or helping out with the garden. Truth be told, I didn't mind. The way she moved through the house, calm and steady like someone who wasn't pretending, made it easier to breathe. We didn't talk about Lori much. She didn't pry, and I didn't volunteer. Most of the time, we just shared coffee on the porch and watched the sun set behind the hills like we're the only two left who knew how to appreciate it. The town never said much to me outright, but the looks said enough. The knowing nods, the extra handshake at the market, the way the old-timers at the feed store suddenly found me a little more respectable. Nobody liked to cheat in a town like ours, and Lori had managed to put herself square in that category. Daryl? He avoided me like I was a wild coyote looking for a fight. I never said a word to him. I didn't need to. His eyes did enough talking every time they crossed mine. It was late October when the first real sign of change showed itself. Kaylee and I were stacking pumpkins for the church's fall festival when she nudged me with her elbow. You ever think about doing something different? She asked. I blinked. Different how? She shrugged. I don't know. Living a little, maybe. The words sat with me longer than they should have. For years, everything about my life had been routine. Safe. Predictable. Lori and I had built it that way. But maybe safe wasn't the same as good. Over the next few weeks, Kaylee and I started filling in the empty spaces. Early morning rides out to the ridge, quiet dinners without words needing to be forced, laughter that didn't sound like it was hiding something. It wasn't about replacing Lori. It wasn't even about getting even anymore. It was about finally feeling like myself again. The house didn't seem so quiet anymore. It seemed peaceful. One Sunday after service, as folks gathered for potluck, Kaylee took my hand. Just like that. In front of everyone. No spectacle. No grand announcement. Just her, standing beside me, unafraid and unapologetic. A few folks noticed, nodded, even smiled. I noticed Lori too, standing stiff on the far side of the lot next to her sister. She turned away fast, pretending like she hadn't seen a thing. But I saw, and that was enough. By the time winter rolled in, the whispers had died down. Folks stopped looking at me like I was the poor husband who got done wrong. Now, they just saw me as Blake again. Blake who took care of his land. Blake who didn't crumble. Blake who showed up to church with Kaylee and left with his head held high. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I'd lost anything. I felt like I'd started something better. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.